Welcome into 5 Wide Fantasy. Today we're talking top 24 running backs for the 2023 fantasy football season. We'll be running through each and every player here from top to bottom and giving a little bit of reason why I have them where I have them slotted. And as well, be sure to keep in mind there are some players that, of course, are missing in these rankings. And I'm not just going to set rankings that are very similar to what the consensus is. That's not going to help you win fantasy leagues. I want you to know the players that I absolutely love and have much farther in rankings compared to others. If you guys enjoyed today's video, be sure to drop a like, subscribe to the channel as well if you enjoyed. And big shout out to our partners over at the STUNT for being our season-long show partner for this NFL season. So I got an awesome video for you guys to check out. Let's get to it. Social media is such a crowded space these days. If you're looking for sports content on the latest news, advice, or hell, even entertainment, it can be cluttered by content you don't actually want to see. That's where the STUNT comes in. They've taken all the elements of your favorite social media apps, brought it to one place, and made it about the one thing we love most: sports. STUNT was founded by an ex-Google employee, so the design is eye-popping and the navigation is simple. Check out the latest takes, sparks, and live rooms from us and other content creators like Trey Wingo and Michael Irvin. Don't just follow sports. Be a part of the conversation. Download the STUNT app today. Again, don't forget to download the STUNT app. The link is down below in the description. We'll be running live Q&As weekly starting next week. We're going to be talking start-sit during the season. We can answer any of your questions during the preseason, during the draft. We can definitely review some of your teams that you're looking, or some mock drafts, or review some teams that you've already drafted, talk about how we can improve them, talk about what we like and what we don't like. So be sure to download the STUNT, an awesome place to get all of your sports content in one place. All right, let's get to our top 24, starting with Rashad Penny, a player that I'm much higher on than consensus, and I have him in my top 24, but I do not have DeAndre Swift. I think this is an opportunity here in this offense for Rashad Penny to put together a season similar to the one that Miles Sanders put together last season, because in this Eagles offense, I say this over and over, said it multiple times so far in the preseason, the value in this Eagles offense is scoring touchdowns as a running back. It is not receptions. There's not enough receiving volume to support a high-value fantasy asset, and Swift proved in Detroit that he is not a guy that you want to use in and around the goal line to score touchdowns. Penny is that guy. He's one of the best players in the NFL in yards per carry, in breakaway run rate, and as well in yards after contact. So we can definitely push the pile. The Eagles were third and inside the 5 rushing attempts by running backs. I don't think Penny can be Miles Sanders because he doesn't really have any receiving profile. That can definitely help elevate it a few spots here, but I still really like him. He's in my top 24 despite going outside the top 36 right now. At 23, Dameon Pierce. He's one that I'm not super excited about, but I know is a player that will have a good amount of volume in an offense that's now led by a rookie quarterback. Definitely want to protect him. And for this team, the Texans, their win total is up at 6.5 over at FanDuel. So I do think that they're a team that's going to have more neutral game scripts and winning game scripts to be in compared to last season having one of the worst records in the league. My big question is, does Devin Singletary's arrival impact his receiving volume? Because he was really solid there. I think he posted 30 receptions last year, which is a really nice way to elevate his floor and make him a really solid RB2. Does Singletary have an impact on that? We shall see, but still like Pierce, he was able to be pretty efficient still, despite the fact this isn't a great Texans offensive line. At 22, Javonte Williams. Williams is a player I'm really excited about, considering the fact we've seen him enter training camp with no injury designation. They've said they wanted to, limit his work in training camp, give him some off days. He doesn't seem to want it. He seems ready to play, which is awesome to see from a guy who had torn his ACL back in October of last year. And we know the Sean Payton, Joe Lombardi offense is really valuable for running backs. We saw it with Austin Eckler the last 2 seasons. We saw it for Alvin Kamara before Sean Payton's exit. So love Williams. Just the reason I have a little bit lower than what I could potentially see him finishing is just, again, Samaje Perine potentially being a guy that keeps Williams from being in an all-encompassing role because of that injury designation. That obviously isn't hold, but it's still good. The label's still there. At 21, I have James Conner. He finished as the RB5 in fantasy points per game after Kyler Murray's injury. Saw over 20 touches, over 100 all-purpose yards, and as well, almost a touchdown per game. I think with Colt McCoy being the likely starter in this offense and the departure of DeAndre Hopkins, he's definitely going to be the straw that stirs the drink for this team offensively. As poor as they might be, he's a guy who'll be on the field for 3 downs and kind of be able to maintain performance regardless of game script. So Connor's still a player I think he could heavily rely on. Might not see the ability to be, a top 12 guy. could potentially happen when you consider how good he is at converting touchdowns the last 2 seasons, but definitely feels very safe taking him, and that's why I have him inside of my top 24. 20, Jamir Gibbs. Gibbs is a player that I'm definitely lower on than consensus, but he's not a player I'm absolutely not drafting. I probably won't have very many shares of him, but he's not proven to be a capable touchdown scorer. He didn't do it in college. He only scored double-digit touchdowns in his 3rd season. That was at Alabama, one of the best teams in college football. He does not have a nose for the end zone, has not done it with Georgia Tech when he had tons and tons of opportunity. He had a lower share at Georgia Tech. I think it was like less than 25% share of inside the 5 carries. That was at Alabama, but he didn't even have the highest amount of inside the 5 carries on his own team in Georgia Tech when they were one of the worst teams in college football at the Power 5 level. So I do think that role goes to David Montgomery, but the good thing is for Gibbs is the fact that this Lions offense and receiving weapons aren't really there. So I think Gibbs can still play a major factor in the receiving game. We've seen it in training camp as well. So I still like Gibbs, just not as high on him. Don't see the ceiling that others do. At 19, Najee Harris. Harris is a player that I'm wondering when his lack of efficiency is finally going to play a factor with Jalen Warren just being better than him last season. Of course, I know that Harris dealt with injuries. I do still like Harris. I don't completely, I'm not completely saying not to draft him, but at his current ADP, if anything happens volume-wise, his efficiency isn't good enough to be able to return you value. I'm still a problem with the Steelers' offense being run by Matt Canada. I still think Harris will see the lion's share of work here in this offense, so I'm not completely out on him, but I just fail to see that high ceiling. At 18, Travis Etienne. I expected to see more from Etienne last year as a receiver, and now Calvin Ridley enters the mix. That will be an issue. This is still an explosive back. He was top 12 in breakaway run rate last season. Definitely someone that can create big plays. How will Tank Bigsby's arrival impact him in and around the goal line and scoring touchdowns? Because he wasn't very efficient in those areas last season. He had 13 inside the 5 carries, only 3 touchdowns. Bigsby's a player that can absolutely move the pile. He was very good at Auburn with an Auburn offensive line that was really, really poor. So he's comfortable with that with his Jaguars offensive line having some problems. I'm worried about Bigsby. I still like Etienne, but I'm worried about Bigsby's impact on him. At 17, another player I'm high on compared to some of the guys we've just been talking about so in the last few picks here. Alexander Madison. I've really started to I think he's a player very much going overlooked because there's a lot of question marks of how impactful he will be. I'm going to be posting something on the YouTube Shorts and on the 5Wide TikTok later today. This is on Thursday that we're recording, but so hopefully you guys have already seen it. But I've noticed from practice, the Vikings seem to have a lot of questions of who will run behind him with Dwayne McBride, Ty Chandler they haven't really loved. There's a lot of players here that they haven't loved in that backup role. And this is a Vikings team that I think will continue to have a really good offense, but not have a very good defense because they also lost Darius Smith and Dalvin Tomlinson from last year in their front 4. So if they're scoring a lot of points and are giving up a lot of points, I think this offense is going to operate at a really high level because of how poor the defense is. And that's going to give Alexander Madison a lot of touchdown opportunities, like a Jamal Williams type season he could potentially have. And even more so, he's going to be the number 1 guy in this offense for sure. So I really like what I'm hearing. He's a player I've now moved up a number of spots here from that RB20 area, now up to RB17. The guy I'm probably the highest on of anyone you might be seeing on YouTube, James Cook. I'm very excited about James Cook's role in this Bills offense. This is obviously one of the best offenses in the league, and I think he's going to see 50-plus receptions this year because this is a team that we haven't seen under Josh Allen have a 3-down back. I think James Cook can be that guy, and especially he has no competition in the receiving game. Damian Harris is not built for that role. I don't think Latavius Murray will be in that conversation either, so he's going to be the 3-down guy all the time, something that was split between him and Singletary last season. Again, I really like White's opportunity here in this Bills offense, and even with Damian Harrison to potentially steal touches when it comes to scoring touchdowns in those valuable areas in the red zone, I still think Cook won't lose the entirety of that share, so I think he's going to be a 50-plus reception guy in a really good offense, so he can still have the chance to post, an 8-touchdown to 10-touchdown type season. So I love James Cook. He's going as the RB30. I have him 14 spots ahead. He's one of my favorite guys to draft right now. 15, Miles Sanders. He's a player that I've consistently been moving up now as well. Sanders is in this Frank Reich offense. I'm definitely looking to do a little bit more research, read a little bit more. I think we're going to be hosting some live streams over on the OwnersBox Twitch channel. We'll be having some writers and some people that are some beat reporters from some of these various teams to get more information when it comes to some of these training camp battles, these new offensive schemes. And I think Sanders could benefit from that with Reich, obviously with Jonathan Taylor leading him to an RB1 overall season. Then you look at the receiving options in this Panthers offense, the rookie quarterback. I think Sanders could be relied upon heavily. We've seen him post a 50-plus reception season back in 2019, I believe, as a rookie. So I definitely think Sanders could come into a role here where he's touching the ball a ton. And last year he was very efficient with his opportunities. And we saw the Panthers last season, in that tail part of last year where they were really efficient running the ball. Like they did it very, very well. So this offensive line is capable of pushing the pile forward and doing a good job there. So I do like Miles Sanders. At 14, Breece Hall. Hall is a player that I moved down a little bit. I love what he can do when he's on the field. He isn't in training camp working out with the team. If the team does bring in a free agent signing, he's going to move down in my rankings. But if they don't, and it's still Michael Carter and Zonovan Knight, I feel a lot more comfortable about Hall, and he'd probably move back up. But again, the label here of the guy coming off the torn ACL, not being able to really be all that productive. Javonte Williams is going far, far later. Breece Hall's on the precipice of that top 12 guy. That gives me a little bit of pause here. This is definitely a guy that, as it currently stands, if I had to draft today, I'm not drafting. But as we get closer to the season, we'll learn a lot more, and I'll have a lot more for you. At 13, Kenneth Walker. Walker's a player that I think is going to benefit from the fact that the Seahawks lose their offense or their quarterbacks coach, Dave Canales, who really worked fantastically with Geno Smith. They've talked a little bit more about wanting to kind of run to set up the pass. I think the rushing volume might increase with Canales being gone. So I like that for Walker. He's battling a groin injury. He's going to miss some time, but Zach Charbonnet's not able to take advantage of that. He's missing, maybe sounds like he'll miss even more time with a shoulder injury. So I think that's good for Walker. And Walker was a great player to rely on last year and was really efficient in the latter part of last season. He was 8th in breakaway run rate, but he only scored 2 touchdowns on 10 inside the 5 carries. So that's an opportunity for him to improve in this offense. He's definitely the guy they'll go to convert touchdowns inside the 5 and in around the red zone. So I like that about him there. At 12, Joe Mixon. Mixon is a guy I'm pretty high on compared to consensus as well. I don't think Chase Brown impedes on his inside the 5 work. He was not good at Illinois in converting red zone touchdowns and goal line touchdowns. That is a problem for him. The Bengals know this when they drafted him, something that they talked about during his college days. And I do think Mixon will still hold the role here in the receiving game. Brown elevated that role a little bit at Illinois in his final season, but I think it was just, this is our best player. Let's get him in the ball as often as possible, not necessarily about his receiving chops. This is one of the best offenses in the NFL. This is a guy that is giving me those Josh Jacobs vibes as a player that just gets every single touch for this offense. He's not going to be as efficient as Jacobs, so I don't have him in that top 10 right now, but the opportunities are going to be really, really high for Joe Mixon. Another comp for me to Josh Jacobs is Aaron Jones, who comes in at RB11 for me. I think this team is going to run the ball more with the departure of Aaron Rodgers and now Jordan Love stepping in. And this was a running back that's been crazy efficient. He's top 15 in breakaway run rate. He averaged 5.3 yards per carry on really good, like a significant amount of volume last season. He had the 6th most targets. I think this is a team that leans on its offensive line, leans on its running game that was so good last year. And now that Aaron Rodgers is gone, they're going to throw the ball less inside the 5, which will be very good for Aaron Jones when it comes to scoring some more touchdowns this season. So I love Aaron Jones. He's someone I'm definitely willing to reach for and make sure I have on all my teams. At 10, Jonathan Taylor. What the fuck's going on? I really don't know what the deal is in Indianapolis. I don't think he's actually going to be traded. I do think he's going to play for the Colts. We just see teams and general managers that say, we don't value the running back position. We're not willing to sign you to that second, that third contract. But then we also see these GMs not being able to let these guys go on very cheap. So I don't think a team's going to be willing to pay the draft capital to acquire Taylor. So if he's in this Colts offense, they're going to need to rely on him just with the change at the lack of production at quarterback, whether it's Richardson, whether it's Minshew. I think Taylor will definitely be the driving force for this team offensively under Shane Steichen. So I definitely still think that Taylor's a guy you want to draft. There's just too many questions right now. He'd definitely move ahead once we have a little bit more clarity there. 9, Derrick Henry. Henry's a player that's going to be running behind the worst offensive line in the league, so that's really going to take a hit to his efficiency, which has been falling off over the last couple of years. And then I think this team overall isn't going to be very good. So how does that impact him from less neutral game scripts, less positive game scripts, more negative game scripts? I still think he's going to be leaned on a ton. The volume's still going to be there. Still think he reaches 300 carries. I just am worried about being able to score touchdowns and this team scoring enough points for him to really be a guy that I'm bona fide wanting to take as a top 5 option. Henry's proved it. He's proved a lot of people wrong year over year. It's hard to fade to, be fading him per se, to not be treating him as the guy he's been year over year. But this season, I have a lot of concerns about the Titans as a team, where it's not as much me thinking about Henry as a player. At 8, Ramondre Stevenson. Look, as far and as long as this team does not add any type of secondary option at the running back spot, Ramondre Stevenson is going to have every single opportunity here when it comes to receptions. We know he's going to be very good for. When it comes to scoring touchdowns, I don't think there's anyone that's going to steal that opportunity from him, whether up here strong, I don't think is going to do that. And then when it comes to rushing volume, I really don't see a lot of guys coming in here and ceding his opportunities. So volume is really, really good. I think the Patriots are, they're in for a really tough schedule this season, but I still think under Bill Belichick, this is a team that will still lean on the ground game, lean on Stevenson, and still find themselves in enough neutral game scripts to really return on his price right now. So I really like Stevenson. He's my RB8 now on the season. At 7, Josh Jacobs. Another player where I'm questioning, will his absence have an impact here? Could Zamir White enter into more of a receiving role? He's been their number 1 guy in training camp so far with Jacobs out. Jacobs definitely feels really disrespected by this Raiders team because, of course, they didn't pick up his option. He proved it, had a fantastic season last year. He was probably the best running back in the NFL when you look at all of the major stats when it comes to breaking tackles, when it comes to creating big plays. He was a great option in the receiving game too. Obviously, this is a Raiders team that I think is going to take a step back, but it could honestly help Jacobs because Jimmy Garoppolo is a guy that's not willing to push the ball downfield nearly as much. Will definitely check the ball down. So I still am looking to draft Jacobs, but again, right now it's concerning. If my draft was today, what the hell is going to happen moving forward? And it's a risk I'm probably not willing to take in that early portion of my draft. At 6, Saquon Barkley. I have some questions. Barkley's a player that is definitely higher up in a lot of other people's rankings. How will this far more difficult schedule impact him? I mean, the later part of his season was baby shits off schedule, great for running backs. I think going into this season, he'll have a much more difficult time for this team in terms of positive game scripts to run the football in. This is a team that won double-digit games. And then as well, will Darren Waller's arrival impact him in the receiving game? Because Waller has been a fantastic target for Daniel Jones, one he's really keyed in on. And will that impact Barkley? Because I'm just concerned about the touchdowns being able to keep up and the receiving volume being able to keep up. Still think it's going to be at a really high level. That's why he's still my RB6. But those are the question marks I have and why he's not my top 3, top 4 guy that a lot of people have him at. At 5, Tony Pollard. Pollard is a player coming off major injury with the high ankle sprain and as well the, who's the major leg injury too? I can't remember what exactly the injury was. Was it his tibia? Anyways, I do think that Pollard is still set to be in a really, really increased role compared to last season, where he was already in that top 12 conversation. McCarthy will give his RB1 significant share of the opportunities. A 71.2% share his RB1 had in his last season calling plays in 2018 with the Packers. So I definitely think Pollard is in for a role that's going to have significant volume. We saw Ronald Jones is suspended for the first few games of the season. Do the Cowboys even hang on to him? A Deuce Vaughn potentially stepping in is someone that could eat into the receiving role, but definitely won't be given the opportunity to score touchdowns. Very, very undersized guy. And the offense wants to do a better job taking care of the ball. McCarthy's talked about that at length during training camp, before training camp, in the offseason when they made these changes at the offensive coordinator spot. So I definitely think that means Pollard's volume will increase on the ground. Well, it naturally will because Zeke leaving, and Zeke leaves like double-digit touchdowns being able to be picked up. Pollard will definitely take a share of those. So I really like Pollard as a top 5 guy. At 4, Nick Chubb. The Browns are one of my favorite teams coming into the season. If you've watched any of my videos, I think you know that. I think he's going to be in for more scoring opportunities this season. This team is going to score more points. He was the RB5 in 2022, despite the fact Kareem Hunt was taking over 130 carries last season, and I think 25 plus red zone carries as well. I think Chubb is in for an increasing receiving volume, even with the arrival of Jerome Ford. The team wants to get him the ball as often as possible. I see this being similar to the Titans wanting to get Derrick Henry the ball more in the receiving game, because when he does get the ball, he creates a ton of positive plays that not many other backs can, because again, Chubb has been one of the most efficient backs in the league. He averaged 5 yards per carry while getting 300 attempts last season. Not a lot of guys can do that, so I definitely love Chubb, especially from the perspective of being able to score more touchdowns this season in a better Browns offense. At 3, Austin Eckler. I do have Eckler as my 3. A lot of people have him as the 2. My concern is less receiving volume. Kellen Moore is definitely an adept to targeting his receivers and tight ends and doing a little bit less with his running backs in the receiving game because they do want to push the ball downfield. Lombardi didn't want to do that last season. They checked the ball down a ton. Herbert had one of the lowest ADOTs in the league among starting quarterbacks. But where I do think they'll be better is running the football. So Eckler can be more efficient on the ground, could still potentially, maybe not, maybe he doesn't score the same amount of touchdowns as last season, but he will have the opportunity to score a ton of touchdowns because they will run the ball a fair bit more, I think, in the red zone. And again, maybe finally the chance to reach 1,000 rushing yards for Eckler, which he hasn't done. So I like that opportunity there. At 2, Bijan Robinson. Robinson is a fantastic talent. I think with the draft capital spent, he will immediately be thrust into the RB1 role. And this is the highest volume rushing offense last season in the NFL of the last 13 years. So I love the opportunity he has here in this offense under Arthur Smith, who's a great designer when it comes to running the football. The Falcons have one of the easiest schedules in the league as well, so an opportunity to be in some positive game scripts, win some football games, score some touchdowns. And with Desmond Ridder at quarterback, I do not trust this passing offense, so I love Bijan as a guy to be targeting your first 5 picks of your fantasy leagues. At 1, not one that I think is going to be surprising, Christian McCaffrey. He was the RB1 last season after joining the 49ers, scoring 20.5 fantasy points per game in half PPR formats. There's really not much more to say. This is a Kyle Shanahan offense that really values running backs and running the football. We've seen it in his time in Atlanta before arriving in San Francisco. So McCaffrey's my 101 at the running back spot without a doubt. So love McCaffrey. All right, those are our top 24 running backs heading into the 2023 fantasy season. Guys, if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to let me know. Subscribe to the channel, get those post notifications on. We're going to be posting 5 days a week. That is Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Saturday. So be sure to like the video. Comment down below with any of the thoughts you guys have on these rankings, on any players you would have in, you would have out, and be sure as well to check out the stunt. That link will be down below in the description. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you next time. All right, those are the top 24 wide receivers heading into the 2023 fantasy season. Tomorrow we'll be dropping our top 24 running backs, so if you do want to make sure you don't miss that video, hit that subscribe button, turn those post notifications on. If you guys got questions about these players in the top 24 or some players that you're like, hey, this guy missed, why did he miss? Happy to answer those in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you on the next one.